There's a lot going on today. The closing ceremony for the Olympics just wrapped up. The Mariners are playing the Mets on Sunday Night Baseball. And I am doing my first ever live stream here on the air. This is a day that has been a long time coming, but here it finally is. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the air with Brian Gregory. I'm your host, Brian Gregory, and today I'll be giving my official conference championship predictions as well as my official college football playoff predictions. And there's a purpose that drives this episode. Over the past year, I've dealt with a lot of trolls, both on the internet and in person. And I want to have receipts because sometimes people put words in my mouth and they're words that are not true. They bring up predictions that I never made, and so I want to have an account. I want to have the receipts here. I want to make my official predictions so that if somebody wants to call my bluff, they can just come right back to this episode of The Air with Brian Gregory and reference them. Now, before we delve into those predictions, I do want to give a little disclaimer here. This is, like I said, it's my first ever live stream. And so I'm dealing with technology I've never dealt with here before. I'm using OBS, which is a totally new software. I'm still learning the ropes of it. So if there are any mess-ups, please forgive me. I'm trying very hard to ensure that this goes smoothly. But if anything messes up, please don't come at me with your pitchforks because I'm brand new at this thing. But thank you all for your support. I appreciate it so much. And if you're new here, please subscribe. That's how we keep this enterprise, this show free here. And the more subscribers and views and likes I get, the more amazing things and content I can provide for y'all. So please like and please subscribe. It is very much appreciated. Let's take a little swig of Ozarka before getting into this prediction video. So we're going to start right down I-30 here in Arlington, Texas. The Big 12 championship, it happens right in my place of work. And my prediction for the championship of the revamped Big 12 is Utah and Oklahoma State. And I went through several different iterations of this game, what it could possibly look like, what teams could be involved. And I come up with several different combinations, and to me, Utah and Oklahoma State is just what makes most sense. And the reasoning behind this pick is because Utah and Oklahoma State are the two most experienced and seasoned teams in the Big 12 with the most rolling over into this 2024 season. They have the biggest sense of continuity. When you look at the landscape of the Big 12, it's chaotic. There's a lot of movement taking place. There's new teams involved. There's new characters in the sitcom that is the Big 12. Utah's a new team. Oklahoma State is not. But when there's a lot of chaos and there's a lot of moving parts, there's a lot of change, I always trust those that have the most continuity and the most stability in those times of chaos. Those two teams to me are Utah and Oklahoma State. Utah, of course, Kyle Whittingham has forged that amazing culture that players buy into year in, year out. That's why this is a 9, 10, 11 win-a-year team. It's no coincidence. Utah is favored by FanDuel to win the Big 12. They have Cam Rising coming back. They have Brant Keith coming back. They have 70% returning production on defense this year. So this is a very experienced team that has been effective on both sides of the ball. Even in a season that kind of fell apart at the seams last year, Utah still remained competitive till the very end because that's what they do. I've always said that Utah under Kyle Whittingham, they're like the Pittsburgh Steelers of college football. They're not going to win it all, but they're going to make noise. They're going to make a playoff spot, and they're going to compete with everybody that they play. That's the culture that Kyle Whittingham has forged there. He's been coaching there for a very long time. It's a stable organization. I like Utah to go to Arlington this year, and a little bit of background on Oklahoma State. Same deal. Mike Gundy has been their head coach for 19 years. Their quarterback, Alan Bowman, is going in his 7th season. I didn't even know that that's possible. I mean, that dude must walk around Stillwater, Oklahoma, and, every bartender, every server, there's every person in that town and every store must know him by his first name because he's been there for a very long time. You just walk into any store, hey Alan, what's up, Alan? How you doing, Alan? But he's back. Of course, he's very experienced, um, and it goes out saying the Ollie Gordon is returning. He rushed for over 1,700 yards last year, which is unbelievable. They have a very experienced wide receiver room. I mean, Brennan Presley is still at Oklahoma State, and I swear Brennan Presley has been at Oklahoma State since I was at Siena. And that was a very long time ago. Oklahoma State's defense, it can improve. There's definitely a ceiling for this defense, but they're returning 10 starters, so you'll have continuity when it comes to that team's defense. Utah and Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship. I will take Utah to win that game. I just think that they're the more complete team going into that matchup, and so Utah will be your conference champions, according to me, for the Big 12. Now, I love this prediction, and I hope you all do too. If you're a fan of college football and its pageantry and its traditions, you will love and appreciate this matchup with all your heart. This is the ACC Championship, predicted by Brian Gregoire, and it is a rematch of the Sunshine State rivalry between the Florida State Seminoles and the Miami Hurricanes. Let me tell you, if this thing comes to fruition, excited is an understatement. I look forward to this game each and every single year. It's so physical. There's so much passion. There's so much pure hatred between these two teams. So to see them not only get a rematch, but get a rematch of the conference championship, I mean, that's top tier college football, and I'm here for it. And of course, like, this is something that I'd love to see. But let me break down why it's the logical choice. So there's several teams in the ACC who could make a running for this thing. You could argue Clemson. Me personally, I think that Clemson is somewhat on the decline, and just because of the way that Dabo Swinney is addressing the transfer portal and NIL, like I just don't think that they're going to be able to keep up with your Florida State and your Miamis for much longer, who have been very much addressing their collectives in that situation. You have Virginia Tech, who I think is an ascending program, and I think is building something that will have sustainability for years to come, but they're just not going to be quite there yet in 2024. Like the cake is in the oven. It's on 350. It's been in there for about 16 minutes, but it's not quite 34 minutes yet for the Hokies. And then NC State will be competitive. I think they'll be an exciting team this year, but not quite to the caliber for ACC championship. I could picture a scenario where Clemson makes it in. I just don't see it. I don't think that they have the firepower to compete with a Florida State or a Miami. So let's talk about the Seminoles. They have a very favorable schedule, especially early on in the season. They're going to be making explosive plays with DJ Uyunglele. I may have gotten that right. If I mess it up, please don't blast me in the comment section. I'm trying my best here, damn it. That there's a mix of returning receivers and transfers for Florida State, but a lot of talented guys in that wide receiver room. And you have a solid system of both returning and transfer portal players on defense. It's going to be a very effective defense. It'll be very stingy. And Florida State's going to be figuring it out a lot on the defensive, on the offensive side of the ball. Forgive me. Just because there's a lot of turnover. There's a lot of guys who went to the draft. So they're going to be trying to find a rhythm on that side of the ball. But I think there's enough talent there that as the weeks go by this season, they will figure it out. But defensively, they'll be strong enough to give the offense enough of a foundation to have time to figure it out on that side of the ball. Miami. Let's go to Miami. Cam Ward, the Washington State transfer quarterback. I firmly believe that he's going to elevate Miami to the next level. We've been looking for that player for years. I've been seeing Mario Cristobal establish this foundation in Miami, and this team get better year in, year out. They had a rough schedule last year, so it was going to be damn near impossible for Miami to make any kind of noise last year. And I said that in my video that I made last summer, that last season would be a foundational year, kind of laying down the bricks for time to come. But at this point, now that they have a star quarterback like Cam Ward, I think this team is going to take the step to the next level. Miami has an amazing offensive line. They have a deep wide receiver room. You have Damian Martinez, the transfer running back from Oregon State's coming in, and I think that he'll give the offense a completely new look as well. Very strong defensive line from Miami. They've been building that for years. Safeties are a concern, but quarterbacks make up for the hole that the safeties make. In this game, I think it's very competitive, just like the first iteration will be. But ultimately, I like Florida State come on top in this one. Now, let's get to the juicy, exciting stuff here. The Big Ten Championship. And in Indy this year, I think you'll be seeing the Ohio State Buckeyes, who are the odds-on favorites to pretty much win it all this year. This is the most talented team. They have the most composite, talented roster in college football, and they'll be going up against the Oregon Ducks. I said it right, Oregon. So don't come at me in the comment section. I have been working at that one all summer. I think that this will be a fantastic game. I really do. I think that this will be a matchup for the ages. It will be yet another rematch. Whoopsie, I got a little issue here. Hold on. Give me a second. There we go. I'm back. Forgive me. Again, like I said, there's going to be some hiccups here. Or this is a big trial run. These teams play on October 12th. And I will be glued to my screen watching it the entire time. And I'll also be glued to my screen for the entire matchup when they rematch in December in Indy. Ohio State, like I said, this is arguably the best roster in college football. I would argue that this is the 49ers of college football. Just the most complete team, talent everywhere. There's not a hole anywhere on this team. I mean, it is just talent out the wazoo, baby. You look around this field. You got Will Howard at quarterback. You have Quinshon Judkins coming in, Travion Henderson, Emeka Ibuka, Jack Sawyer, beans, greens, potatoes, tomatoes, you name it. Ohio State's got it as far as talent is concerned. And so they are your odds-on favorite to win the Big Ten for a very compelling reason. And second on the list when it comes to FanDuel odds to win the Big Ten is Oregon. This team is going to be exciting. This is going to be one of those sexy teams. You know what I mean? They're going to be explosive. You have Dylan Gabriel transferring in, the left-handed quarterback from Oklahoma, and he has a phenomenal deep ball. I cannot wait to see what he does with his weapons this year. You have Tez Johnson, Trayshawn Holden at wide receiver. Oregon has a good, not great offensive line. They are definitely rebuilding it. It's a reconstructed offensive line, but you had Jackson Powers Johnson go to the NFL, and he was the glue that held that offensive line together. I mean, if you ever played an offensive line, I haven't, but I've talked to people who have, and that the offensive line is a unit. And when you lose that main guy, you got to make up for that. But there's some guys in the offensive line room that I think can really emerge as a leader for Oregon. Very, very talented defense. And, of course, growing up, Oregon was not known for that. But that's been a point of emphasis in Dan Lanning's program. The cornerbacks look solid. And the defensive line is rebuilt, but it'll be effective as well. I think that this game has the possibility to be a shootout. But ultimately, I like Ohio State to win this game and to potentially be the 1 seed in the college football playoff. We'll have to see, though. And now, the one you've all been waiting for, drum roll. We have the SEC Championship. Texas and Alabama. And I know I'm going to catch a lot of heat for this one. Why the hell is Alabama in this? This is Texas's first year in the SEC. How could you not put Georgia in the SEC Championship? Well, lucky for you, I have answers to all of those questions right here, right now. So let's start with the Crimson Tide, because I know there's a lot of questions that lie there, and there's a lot of people that are gonna be slinging arrows at me for being an Alabama homer. I'm a grad, so I'll take it. But let me explain myself before you charge at me with your pitchforks. Yes, Alabama has a new head coach in Kalen DeBoer, but there's considerable returning production on both sides of the ball. There's a lot of dogs on this team. You look around. You've got Deontay Lawson. You've got Tim Smith. You've got Jalen Milroe returning. You now have Ryan Williams in Alabama's receiving core. You have Malachi Moore still on defense. You had a lot of guys that could have gone to the draft and gotten drafted in either the second or third round last year who are still on this team. So Alabama, as much as people want them to take a step back and people are trying to speak Alabama taking a step back into existence, sorry, they're not going to. I think this team goes 10-2. I'm already pretty much decided on the game that Alabama is going to drop this year. I think they lose to LSU in Baton Rouge, and I think that there's a possibility that they lose to either Oklahoma in Norman or to Georgia at home. It's going to be two of those three games that they lose. And if not, the roses could be very red in Tuscaloosa this fall. I'm very excited to see what this team is capable of. Of course, there's question marks to this Alabama team, and I will acknowledge them. Cornerbacks. There's not really an answer. Yes, you had Domani Jackson transfer from USC, but beyond him, there's not a lot of depth. There's not a lot of proven depth. But I think that there are guys in that locker room who are capable of filling the void that was left by Terrion Arnold's and Kool-Aid McKinstry. It'll take time and it will take patience. Please, Alabama fan base, have patience with this team. I beg of you. You have a new coaching regime coming in here. It's going to take time. Please, it's going to take time. But week in and week out, I think you're going to see players emerge and players impress. Wide receivers, another question mark for the Tide. But I like Ryan Williams. I like Kendrick Law returning. There's a lot of younger guys in that locker room that I think are ready to emerge and perform. We have C.J. Dupree coming back, Caleb Odom. And maybe my boy Ty Lockwood will make some noise this year. Shout out Ty Lockwood and Cole Adams. You could see those guys emerge this year. So do not sleep on Alabama. And it's also one of those teams where when they have pushback in the media and when people are betting against them, Alabama always rises to the occasion. They have not proven me wrong yet, so I'm not going to pick against them this year. Texas. And I know a lot of people hate this too because they're new to the SEC, and a lot of fans and alumni of SEC schools that aren't Texas, their worst nightmare is seeing the Longhorns win this conference in their first year in it. Well, I have some bad news for y'all. I'm picking Texas to win this game. I think Texas goes to Atlanta, and they beat the Tide. Texas is one of the most favorable schedules in the SEC, and late in the season, you see it every year. It comes down to health. It comes down to how rested you are, how conditioned you are. And when you have an easier schedule, you are more prepared in these games. We saw it with Georgia back in 2022, right? When they played LSU in the SEC championship, Alabama had a brutal schedule. Alabama was a better team than LSU, and I think Alabama could have competed head-to-head with Georgia from a talent standpoint in 2022. Alabama had a brutal schedule. Georgia's schedule was very favorable compared to other SEC teams. So when they played Tennessee that November, they crushed them. When they played LSU in Atlanta, they crushed them. When they played Ohio State, they were ready. And when they played TCU, they mopped the floor with them. You're looking at a similar situation with Texas here. It's a favorable schedule. They're going to be well-rested going into these games. And I think for that reason, you're going to see them beat Alabama. You have Quinn Ewers coming back. You have a litany of talented transfer wide receivers and tight ends. You have, of course, Isaiah Bond coming from Alabama. You have Silas Bolden coming from Oregon State, and Amari Niblack coming from Alabama as well. Texas has to improve a lot on the defensive side of the ball, but you're going to see the secondary get bolstered this year. And they have a lot of returning talent for linebackers and some on the defensive line as well. So I like Texas to win that game. So those are your 4 championship games. Those are your 4 winners. Utah, Ohio State, Alabama, and Florida State. And now, for the moment you've all been waiting for, the Brian Gregoire college football playoff bracket. Let me take a little swig of water before I put this thing up on the screen. I talk about this with people all summer. And I have gone back and forth on this. I've gone through many different iterations of this thing, but this is my final verdict, and I'm sticking to this. I will die on this hill. This is my bracket right here. Look at it, absorb it, live it, love it, be it. There it is. So, first round of the playoff, we're looking at Georgia and Boise State. They'll be playing in Athens. And if you know me, you know I'm a huge Boise State guy. Shout out Will Miller, another huge Boise State guy. I wish this game was being played on the blue turf, but unfortunately it will be being played in Athens, Georgia, and have no doubt about it, that will be a very raucous environment. You look at that second game here, you have Ole Miss and Missouri. That game will be played at the Vaughts, and you know I love me some Oxford, Mississippi too. I think one of the best towns in college football. I love it every time I go to Oxford. They've never lost a party, and I don't think they'll lose a party that day either. You have Oklahoma, and that was my sneaky pick right there. I told y'all there was going to be a surprise pick. Oklahoma is my surprise pick to make the college football playoff just because of how stingy their defense is going to be. And I think Jackson Arnold will become more and more comfortable each and every single week. Very well coached with Brett Venables. And then, of course, you have Oregon just barely missing one of the top seeds, losing to Ohio State. They'll be a 6 seed. This game will be in Eugene, and it will be loud, damn it, let me tell you. And this right here, classic matchup between Alabama and Penn State. We haven't seen that one since like 2011. And if that happens, let me tell you, I will be at Bryant-Denny Stadium, and that place will be electric. I cannot wait to see what Ennis will be like before and after that game. If you know, you know. But let's get down to these predictions here. Georgia and Boise State. Boise State, I think, is your best G5 team. I had to think about this one a lot. I was thinking about UTSA. Shout out my boy Joseph Chapa. He really advocated for UTSA as far as G5s go. You had to think about Tulane as well. But ultimately, I went with Boise State. I think they'll go to Athens, but I think that they'll get destroyed in Athens. I'll take Georgia to win that game. You go to Oxford, Mississippi for that high-octane SEC matchup between the Rebs and Missouri. I think that will be an absolute shootout. I think that will be a very riveting game. At the end of the day, I don't think that you're going to see Ole Miss lose at the Vaughts. Ole Miss has never lost a party, and I don't think that they're going to lose this game either. Then you look at Oklahoma and Oregon. I think that this is another game for the ages. I think that this has a possibility to be a very physical game. Two great defensive lines going up against each other. In that game, I like Oregon to move on and play Florida State. And then Alabama and Penn State. I think that this game is competitive for a half. I think you see Alabama up like 17-14 at the half. And then you see the Tide hit their stride and win this thing and move on to play Texas in the next round, which will be a very, very high-octane matchup. So, that's my first rounds. Now let's go to these second-round matchups. There's my winners. You have Georgia traveling to Salt Lake City to play Utah. Ole Miss traveling to Columbus to play Ohio State. Or no, forgive me. No, these games are not. These games are neutral site. Forgive me. I messed that up. My bad. My B. Then you have Oregon traveling. No, they're neutral site games. I'm still very much getting this down. This is all very new to me. You have Oregon and Florida State, and then Alabama and Texas. And so you look at Georgia and Utah. I think this is going to be a very fascinating game. And I think you can see these teams really battle it out for the first half of the game into the third quarter, but I think Georgia ultimately overtakes Utah. Ohio State and Ole Miss, I just played this game on College Football 25 the other day. Ole Miss won. It was at the Vaught, but this will be neutral sites. And I like Ohio State to win that. I think they're just a more complete team. There's no holes anywhere on this Ohio State team. Ole Miss still revamping that defense a little bit. I think it's going to greatly improve this year. Like they've added Walter Nolan onto the defense. Very scary. On the offensive side of the ball is Ole Miss. Of course, with Trey Harris, Juice Wells, Jackson Dart coming back. But I like Ohio State to win that game. Rematch of the 2015 College Football Playoff, the first ever 4-team College Football Playoff between Florida State and Oregon. I think you have the same results. I think Oregon wins that game and moves on to the Final Four. I think they're just a little bit too much on the offensive side of the ball for Florida State to keep up with. And here we go. Here we go. And I'm going to remove the background of this one because I'm going to look you all in the eyes to talk about Alabama and Texas. Because I know a lot of you all want answers on this. This will be a rematch from a couple weeks past. Remember, they played in the SEC Championship. Neutral site again. Does Alabama lose to teams 2 times in a row usually? No. I'm not picking them 2 here either. I think that they lose to Texas in the SEC Championship, but I think that they see enough out of Texas and are able to game plan and prepare for this game enough to where Alabama wins this rematch and goes to the Final Four. And I know a lot of y'all are going to be furious about this one in the comments section. And I thought this for a while. I thought if I really wanted to pull the trigger and say Alabama was going to win this thing. And I do, because I just cannot picture a scenario where Alabama loses to a team 2 times in a row. And you also got to think about this is Kalen DeBoer going against Steve Sarkisian again. Kalen DeBoer going up against Texas again. What did Kalen DeBoer do against Texas in the Sugar Bowl a couple months ago? He won. And I think that he'll be able to do just the same again. So I like Kalen DeBoer and the Tide to go to the Final Four. Love it or hate it, that's what it is. And so let's go to the Final Four here. Whoops, like I said, sorry. Still adjusting some things here. All right. Here's the Final Four. Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Alabama. This is proving to be exactly what I said that this 12-team college football playoff would be. You'd have a lot of different teams in it from the outset at the very beginning. Like you see Missouri in this thing. You see Ole Miss in this thing. Penn State, Boise State, teams that haven't made it in before, making it in. But then they get filtered out. They get weeded out. And the blue bloods, the big dogs, are the ones that are still there at the end of the day. You have 4 of the top 5 title favorites in the Final Four here. I just think that's how it's going to shake out. Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Alabama. Georgia and Ohio State, Mr. Zeke Wager. This is the one I was telling you about, pal. Zeke is a big Ohio State fan, and he was in my basement when Ohio State played Georgia in the Peach Bowl several years ago, and Ohio State missed that field goal to win the game. I think you can have a similar result. I think Georgia's going to win this playoff semifinal rematch, and they go on to the national championship. Georgia is just this team in this tournament that finds himself at the right place at the right time. I'll expand on that at the end of this video. Alabama and Oregon playing each other for the first time ever. Yes, I researched this before this episode took place. This will be the first time these 2 squads would ever play. I played this game, too, on College Football 25. Alabama absolutely creamed Oregon, and this game was played at Bryant-Denny. I think Alabama wins this game. I think Alabama, even though they do have their holes, I think that this is just a very bought-in team at this point. They build a lot of confidence after building Texas, and these are, I know these guys in this locker room. They're a fiery bunch, and when they have something to buy into, they're going to jump in with all force. And so when they have a feat like beating Penn State and then being the rematch with Texas, the momentum is just going to carry them to a win over Oregon, and a rematch once again with Georgia in the national championship game. I know that a lot of people are going to have a lot to say about that, but there's the natty right there. Alabama and Georgia. And so, let me put my camera back on for this one. Come on. Come on, baby. There I am. There I am. Still getting this thing down. Thank y'all for being patient, though. Georgia and Alabama and the Natty. And mind you, these two teams play on September 28th in Tuscaloosa. A certain somebody might be at that game. Little teaser. I think you see Alabama win that game at Bryant-Denny, or I should say Saban Field at Bryant-Denny Stadium. But in this national championship game, I think Georgia prevails. I think that this is a team that just has a lot of continuity. They have a lot of sustainability. Kirby Smart has been meticulously building the foundation for this team for years, and it is now a full-on powerhouse. And I think he gets his third ring against Alabama. He's not facing Nick Saban this time. It's Kalen DeBoer's first time coaching Alabama in a national championship. I think that Georgia's just the more experienced team at that point. And so I like Georgia to win this game. I think it'll be a riveting game as always. I think it'll be back and forth a battle just like the 2023 SEC Championship was. But I think Georgia comes out on top. So I'm going to end this video by talking about Georgia for a few minutes since they are my national championship prediction. Georgia is the team. They're going to find themselves at the perfect place at the perfect time. There's been a lot of conversation going into this 12-team playoff about the 5 seed, because likely the 5 seed will not be playing in a conference championship the week before the quarterfinals, so they will have some time to rest. They won't have that turnaround. I think Georgia's going to find themselves in that situation because their schedule is daunting. They have to go to Oxford to play Ole Miss. They have to go to Austin to play Texas. They have to go to Tuscaloosa to play Alabama. That's a beyond daunting schedule for the Dogs, and I think they're going to drop a couple games. I think they look at themselves in the mirror and they see themselves at 10-2 to end the season. And those teams that they lost to via Alabama and Texas are also 10-2. Who's going to get the edge? Alabama and Texas. But this is a break for Georgia, because while Alabama and Texas are playing each other, they get time to rest and get more conditioned, get healthy if they get injuries, get those guys back on the field again, and be ready for this college football playoff. Be ready to host Boise State. And then I'm gonna throw this college football playoff bracket back up on the screen again, just to illustrate to you this path that Georgia will have. You look at this. You have Boise State, who I think that's a great matchup for them. Compared to who else they could be playing, Ole Miss, Missouri, Oklahoma. Oklahoma, they beat the shit out of you on defense. Respect to Boise State. I love the Broncos. I think Georgia roundhouses them in that game. And then they play Utah, who of the remaining top seeds is the least challenging. When you're looking at Florida State, Texas, and Ohio State, I would take Utah to play out of those teams. And of course, Ohio State is a challenging game, right? Don't get me wrong. But you have time off, and you have an easier setup when it comes to opponents. This is very favorable for Georgia. Playoffs for every sport. It all depends on health. It all depends on matchups and who's hot at the right time. And I think that that's going to be the Georgia Bulldogs this year. Georgia is Brian Gregory's national championship pick. It doesn't feel great to say that as an Alabama alum, but I want to keep it at 100 on the show, right? I want to be honest. I want to be transparent with my picks. This is truly my gut here. I think Georgia wins it all. And I'm going to face heat with Alabama going as far as they did, going to the Natty. I said early on that they were getting eliminated in like the semifinals or the quarterfinals. But just looking at that bracket and how it got set up, the rematch with Texas, I just want to see them losing that game. Playing Oregon, I just think Alabama has the physicality and the dogs to beat Oregon. And then Georgia is where they come to a halt. And of course, playing Penn State at Bryant-Denny Stadium, I think that's just way too much for the Nittany Lions. We've seen what Penn State does on big stages. It's not too pretty. I'd like Alabama to win that game too. So thank you all for watching this for this past half an hour. I've really enjoyed having you. I appreciate all of y'all's support. I've been seeing y'all in the comment section, and I can't wait to go look at these comments. This is going to be enthralling. This is going to be fascinating. I appreciate all of you guys so much. I know there are a couple mess ups with the graphics. I'll be working on that as these weeks go on. But this went very smoothly. And to all of you who watched, thank you. Have a great day, and we will be back next week.